Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Don't you love it when he comes in? Alfred University political science professor emeritus, Dr. Robert A. Heineman, the Bluebird of Happiness.
I could give you a few tweets on that.
Dr. Heineman,
Yes,
on the impeachment proceedings yesterday, they were sworn in by John Roberts, the Chief Justice there. It resumes on Tuesday. There was a couple of things that popped up October surprise style.
Yes, well, I think you're going to see more of this sort of thing unloosed upon the press, because the press is eager to do everything they can to bring this president down and to overturn the electoral judgment of the American people. So it has all the odor of the Brett Kavanaugh efforts to bring that man down and keep him off the Supreme Court, so that I think you'll be seeing all kinds of scandalous and salacious arguments coming forth, and you're getting some of these people bubbling up. This guy that was a friend of Giuliani's claiming that Trump knew all about it, etc., although he notes that he's never talked to Trump about it.
He's got a picture of himself with Trump. Trump says, I've been photographed with thousands of people. I don't know this guy.
Yeah. Well, he may or may not. It doesn't make any difference. The guy, I think he's a former Soviet citizen, Russian citizen, helping Giuliani. And clearly Giuliani doesn't look good at all in all this sort of thing. And he may well end up facing some charges himself. Sounds to me like he's the sort of fellow who's scrambling around trying to exploit the situation at the time for as much money as he could get. But
who's that, Giuliani or this attorney?
And the other guy, too, as far as that's concerned.
Can I stop you there on Giuliani?
Yes.
Dr. Heineman, did you feel this way about Giuliani when he was mayor of New York, or is it more of a recent opinion?
Well, yeah, it's much more of a recent situation. In fact, when he left as mayor of New York, he tried to get himself a position, I think, in the Bush administration, failed there, and then sort of sold himself around as some sort of specialist in dealing with terrorism and crime.
A security guy.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know, what his financial situation is. But, being from New York and knowing Trump, I'm sure, way back, he ends up working his way into the Trump administration. And he's one of several people Trump has picked up, I think, that have not done him much good. But any case, it's a complicated narrative, and one probably not worth spending much time looking at, frankly.
Did you happen to catch Trump's press conference on Thursday afternoon yesterday?
No, I did not.
He strongly defended Rudy Giuliani as an old friend of his.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. I'm not certain Giuliani keeps friends very long. Most of the people he's been associated with end up disliking him intensely. So maybe maybe they have a meeting of the minds. I don't know, and I don't know, frankly, why Trump would be wasting much time on at this point and defending him to the press. Although I assume the press asked him some questions yesterday relevant to this. I mean, they're trying to dig up as much scandal as they can and trying to set sort of a general context which is very, very negative to the president. At the same time, we must note, Brian, that the president has had some tremendous successes here in the last...
Okay, go over those.
Well, first of all, the whole Iranian situation, although obviously he didn't shoot down that plane, which is really a horrible tragedy. The fact that the Iranians apparently accidentally shot down that Ukrainian airliner has turned the whole Iranian situation around, basically to where, again, the street protests and such are going after the government. Tied with that is the fact that a number of European countries have called for increased sanctions against Iran if they, in fact, do try to negate the nuclear deal that they reached. So there's a number of factors going on there that make, it seems to me, would make Iran a little more willing to negotiate and cool things off. But we'll have to see on that. Then, in the meantime, the president has also received the modified NAFTA agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, passing the Senate overwhelmingly. And so that's a clear victory for President Trump.
Reid is big time in this for the USMCA with President Trump.
Well, good. He's on the right side again. But, I think New York's dairy farmers will gain from this pact because, as I understand it, previously Canada was, I think, putting some very heavy tariffs on American dairy products, and I think those are coming down now with this new agreement. And a lot of other aspects of it I think could be very beneficial to the United States as well as to Mexico and Canada. So that's, I think, a big plus for the president. And then, of course, he's completed this first phase of a deal with China, in which China has agreed to buy, I think it's something like $200 billion in American products in the next couple of years. And included, Brian, in those products are American soybeans. So we're going to get the soybean farmers back in the loop here and begin to sell more soybeans to China, as well as pork. As you know, they've had a swine epidemic over there, and so they are short-handed on pork, and the Chinese eat a lot of pork. So I think the American farmer is going to come out pretty well on this, as well as other producers, including the banks. Apparently China is going to open up its access for American banks, and the investment opportunities there apparently are pretty substantial.
Vladimir Putin, Russia, revamping the Constitution over in Russia. What's going on over there?
Well, clearly Putin is making a move here to maintain his influence as a government leader in Russia. As we mentioned on a previous program, he is term limited, so that when he finishes his term, which I'm thinking maybe is 2022, but I'm not sure, then he's out. Now, one approach he could take, of course, is reworking the Constitution so somehow he could get a third term, whatever. But it doesn't appear that Mr. Putin is too eager to run for re-election at this point. At this point, I think he's not terribly popular in Russia, and although he probably would win, but still, I'm not certain he wants to go through the battle of a reasonably tough re-election campaign. So they're rearranging the Constitution. So this guy, looks like this guy Medvedev, who is sort of Putin's corollary there, would probably run for president, and Putin would then become prime minister. And the whole cabinet has resigned so that they can rearrange the government and rearrange the Constitution, which has to be approved by, the Duma, the parliament, and which it will be. And so it would give the parliament, and I think Putin, more power to pick the cabinet, and Putin would remain presumably as prime minister with, one would guess, quite a bit of power, and Medvedev would sort of play the role of as president. Now, I saw an article a couple of weeks ago on Putin, which I thought was really pretty insightful, and made the point Americans go on and on about Americans playing chess and the Russians playing. The Americans playing checkers and the Russians playing chess. But this guy said that the important way of looking at Putin is that he's a student of judo. He's a practitioner of judo and what we call a judoka. Judo, the peaceful way, Brian. And
I took karate classes as a kid.
Yeah, well, that has nothing to do with judo. Could I move on here with this, please? So that in judo, which is the peaceful way as opposed to karate and all these other violent, the judoka uses the momentum of his opponent, his or her opponent, to his or her advantage. And as someone who has watched a huge number of judo matches in his time, all the way to the national finals.
You're a peaceful man.
Well, I've got some people in the family that are peaceful people. Pretty successful, actually, in that respect.
Wow.
But the point is, you do use your opponent's momentum, and you just take advantage of that. And that's the way Putin plays foreign policy. He doesn't have much to work with. The Soviet military or the Russian military is nothing to write home about. He's got some atomic bombs, we'll give him that, and some other weaponry, but the economy is not in great shape, and so he's really pretty widely stretched. And what he does is he looks for spots where he can move in quickly and take advantage of the situation, take advantage of the weakness of us and others, and gain some advantage for the Russians. So Crimea, some of his actions in the Middle East, he's basically just taking advantage of situations that pop up, and he's able to use what he has left of the Russian army and such to take advantage of it. And I think that does explain how he operates. There's no sort of overwhelming effort to try to restore the Soviet Empire or anything of that sort. But you got to be, on alert, because in the Baltic states, for example, and in Poland, you've got to be very careful there. And we have troops stationed there, as does NATO, just to let the Russians know that we're going to react pretty fast if he tries to take advantage of any weakness there. So you got to be careful. But I think that explains the way Mr. Putin operates. And, to give the guy credit, he's pretty clever.
Great at both chess and
I don't
judo.
know if he plays much chess or not. He runs around bare-chested on horses across the Siberian tundra. He's good at that. I don't know.
A couple of quick state issue.
Sure.
Senator Schumer and Governor Andrew Cuomo. And I should say here, they're both great at helping Alston and St. James, so I'm slow to criticize. But Schumer and Cuomo are not slow to criticize President Donald Trump. This week they have portrayed Trump as anti-Puerto Rican. They both said that Washington Republicans in Congress were supposed to give a certain amount of money, and only a fraction of that money has gone to Puerto Rico. And Cuomo's always trying to upstage Trump on this issue of being nice to Puerto Rico in the aftermath of the earthquakes. A, it looks like Cuomo really does want to run for president because he's trying to upstage Trump. And B, what kind of vote is he trying to get out of Puerto Rico? What's going on there?
Well, the Puerto Rican vote in New York State is considerable. I mean, there are certainly a lot of people, Puerto Rican heritage in the New York City area. So I can see where Cuomo is, sympathetic to their problems. And they do have a lot of problems. There's no two ways about that. So, I think you're reading that pretty well, Brian. You're coming along, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Under your tutelage.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but yes.
What do you make of what they're saying about the money not getting there?
I can't say anything about that.
I can't either, and I don't find anything that corroborates it, although I don't find anything that disproves it.
Yeah, I have no idea how much was apportioned and how much is going down there. It's very clear they need money, but didn't they? wasn't their president just tossed out of office?
They've had a lot of political corruption problems down there.
It's politically a bit of a mess, yeah.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, can we talk about her for a moment?
Oh, goodness, yeah. What?
Well, Nancy Pelosi's
all right.
She's had a big smile on her face in these photographs where she's signing off on the documents to send the impeachment papers over to the Senate. And then she claims that, she's Catholic and she doesn't hate anyone and she loves everyone. And then,
all right, Brian, could you get to the point here? Yeah,
she didn't come across, all I can tell you is there's Facebook memes and talk show hosts pointing this out, this big smile on her face and how happy she really is to do this to Trump. What do you make of that?
Well, I saw a shot of Mr. Schiff and Mr. Nadler and the others. Boy, what a bunch. They were walking across the rotunda there, I think, in the Capitol. And I'm thinking, these are the guys that are trying to overturn the vote of the American people here on a basis that's about as flimsy as you can find. I mean, I just think this would be incredible if they pull this off.
And on that topic, to be perfectly frank, it looks to me, anyways, like all those names you just mentioned are completely in the tank for what their political donors want. Not that they don't come from liberal districts, many of them, but at the same time, it seems like it's a do-nothing situation, with the exception of impeachment when it comes to the establishment in Washington. Yeah.
Well, it is certainly true that in terms of getting things done that need to be done in this country, everything, not everything, but a lot of it has certainly been stalled. And it's just unfortunate we're wasting time on this sort of thing when, in 7 or 8 months, they've got every opportunity to vote Mr. Trump out of office if they want. And, it's a little, I guess it is about 8 or 9 months. And what we're doing now, I think, basically is trying to just raise as many scandals and attacks and complaints against him to try to besmirch him and make him into the ogre that they need in order to defeat him in November. And it's getting to the point where even if Trump wins, people are going to be so unhappy and divided by this effort that it's going to continue to be very hard for him to govern. On the other hand, you look at what he's done, it's pretty incredible. I mean, it really is a tremendous changing the guard here, and it just goes to show how entrenched a lot of these interests are, both on the Republican side and the Democrat side. That bunch inside the Beltway is they've been living off the fat of the land for a long, long time. And I think Mr. Trump's suggesting maybe they get out and get a job.
Trump is constantly accused of corruption. My personal belief on this is that Trump has probably never been this honest in his life because he's so monitored. That guy can't pick up the phone without people falsely accusing
him. Yeah.
This is probably the most honest he's ever been.
Well, I don't think he's dishonest any way you cut it, but I do.
It's
think
amazing.
As a businessman, and especially as a businessman in New York City, he certainly learned and knows how to cut corners in that area. But he's. I don't know of any situation where he's been accused of dishonesty in terms of business. Now, you might accuse him of being engaging in unethical practices, things of that sort, and certainly he's made some mistakes here and there. But the idea that he has to be corrupt, why? He's got plenty of money. It's not that he needs a lot of money. And now some of these guys around him maybe need some extra money. I'm not sure.
Now, you probably didn't want to talk, I'm just guessing, you probably don't want to talk about the Michael Avenatti thing.
I don't know enough about it.
Okay,
frankly.
yeah, he got in more trouble this week.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
This is the
Creepy porn lawyer, as Tucker Carlson calls him.
who Stormy Daniels. Am I going to have to go back to Pornhub and check out Stormy Daniels again, or is this something fresh?
I'll keep you clean on that, Doc.
Oh, thank you. So what's he done? Because they were getting ready to put him in jail there at one point, weren't they?
Federal judge orders Michael Avenatti detained.
Yeah.
He was arrested by IRS agents a couple of days ago.
I see. Well, gee, that's too bad, Mr. Avenatti. Yeah.
They say he was pulling all kinds of scams and
Didn't he get involved in the Kavanaugh thing too? Didn't he?
Yeah, I think he briefly did. He
tried to bring
represented somebody claiming that
he'd been mass raped or something like that.
that
Yeah.
Kavanaugh was this big scam.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of these winners coming up out from under the rocks.
Yeah. Project Veritas released some videos this week. Did you have any thoughts there?
Well, Mr. O'Keefe is out there catching people unawares again. This is the one where did that come up in the debate at all? The Veritas.
I did not hear that it did.
Where they got one of
Bernie Sanders' Iowa campaign guy
saying that they wanted to build gulags for
and that they were going to burn down cities if Bernie loses and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, makes for a dynamic campaign.
Yeah. But what do you make of the techniques that O'Keefe uses?
Well, I think I don't know. I think
everybody has their off-the-record moments. I do have my qualms about that, but
yeah. Well, he's pretty adept at catching people in really quite embarrassing situations. But on the other hand, if that's what people are saying and the way they think, I get, and they're involved in public affairs in one way or another, I guess we're entitled to know that this is the sort of thing they're talking about and pushing.
What do you make of the whole thing of so many people behind the scenes having so much power at such a young age, in their 20s, on the Hill and on the campaign trails?
Yes.
What do you make of that?
Well, that's the way it's always been. You get a lot of these people who they're young kids. They got a lot of energy, and in terms of restraints and what we might say maturity, there isn't too much there. So they tie themselves to a candidate or a cause of one sort or another, and basically they're very active. And once they get inside the Beltway and tied into all the other folks who've built up real experience in various techniques and such, they can be a
force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, that would be well put. They can be helpful or they can be a real problem. And you see this, some of the campaigns for Congress and things of that sort, these guys show up. And again, like I say, I don't know if they make that much money. I doubt that they do, but they're out there campaigning door to door, the whole thing. And in a way, it's fine. But on the other hand, in terms of deliberation and maturity, I think a lot of times they certainly lack that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yeah, it's slip of the tongue there, eh, Brian?
Screwed that
yes,
up.
Indeed. Well, just good to know you're well fed, buddy. Yeah.
An O'Keefe moment.